How's it going? Welcome in to another new NACE International podcast. My name is Ben Dubose, and I'm a staff writer with Materials Performance Magazine and with Coatings Pro Magazine, each within our NACE Publications division. As some of you may know, Materials Performance is the official membership magazine of NACE, and we've got a special podcast coming up today to kick off our new MP interview series. It definitely should have a lot of interest to you if you're a NACE member or if you're really anyone within the corrosion control industry. It's also a podcast that should be very relevant to our Coatings Pro audience and if you're a contractor, because it has a lot to do with the coatings industry as well. With us today, we've got Bob Chalker, CEO of NACE, and Bill Worms, Executive Director of the Society for Protective Coatings, better known as SSPC. As you are probably aware, NACE and SSPC have been discussing a potential combination of their organizations for quite some time, and the 2-week period from April 3rd until April 17th is when members of both NACE and SSPC will be voting on whether to move forward with the proposal. So in today's show, Bob and Bill are going to be making their cases for why they think this is the right move for their organizations. In an effort to make it as balanced a show as possible, this episode was jointly hosted by both NACE and SSPC, and without any further delay, let's play back that conversation.
Hello and welcome to today's podcast. I'm Bree McCullough, Multimedia Specialist for SSPC.
And I'm Ben Dubose, Staff Writer for NACE Publications.
Today we are joined by SSPC Executive Director Bill Worms and NACE CEO Bob Chalker. How are you guys doing today?
Doing very well, thank you.
Doing great.
So as we are recording this podcast, the vote is preparing to go out tomorrow for the proposed combined organization. How are you both feeling about the upcoming membership vote?
Well, I'll jump in first. I'm feeling great about it. I think a lot of work has been done to get us to this point. Great hard work by the member leaders to put a great plan in place. And we've done everything we can to communicate it to the members, to give them opportunity to ask questions. So everything I'm hearing is positive. And where there have been some concerns, I think we've addressed them. So we've teed it up the best we possibly can.
And I'd have to agree with Bob on that. There's been a lot of work done prior to this vote coming to fruition. And we've had a number of different venues we've used to try to get out information. We've had the messaging going out on a weekly basis. We've had town halls at our conference and remotely during NACE's conference week. So a lot of information's been put out there. We've had an opportunity to address a lot of questions that members have had. So I think we're in as good a shape as we can be. And I'll agree with Bob. Everything I'm hearing is positive.
Given the history of both organizations, there's a lot of members that might feel uneasy with such a major change. What can you tell them to ease their concerns or, I guess, better assure them that this move will strengthen the services that both of your organizations can provide? And Bob, we'll start with you.
Oh, thanks. I think a couple things. One is the people who have been leading this effort, the member leaders, are members of this organization, and they gain those same benefits that the other 40,000 members, 45,000 members between our two organizations that you gain. And so it would be a disservice to themselves if they did anything that wasn't in the best interest of the membership. They only serve in these roles for a short period of time, and then they go back to being regular members. So to not do what's in the best interest of the members would not be serving them well. So their interests are in the right place. So you had that kind of leadership involved in making the decisions. And I think the other thing that we have done that has been really advantageous is getting the advice of the third party McKinley advisors, who brings a tremendous amount of expertise, been through this before, and knows how to put a great program in place. So those are two things we did right from the beginning that I think should give some confidence to the members.
Yeah, and I think also built into that is not just what happened in the past, but if the combination does occur, those same board members will be on the board of the new organization. So there'll be continuity, And the other thing I think that was put in place and built into the proposal is the fact that we're looking for people to be involved with the organization moving forward. And they will have a big voice in determining some of the programs and how the outcomes of those programs are determined. So again, I think we've covered it on the backside, and if the combination does occur, on the front side, moving into a potentially new organization. And as some of us have talked about with regard to this potential combination, when you look at the situation we're going through right now in the world with this coronavirus and the effect on our population and the economy, I think that's even more reason to have two organizations that are financially healthy now combined and go off and become one mega organization that can survive anything like this in the future.
So, the most popular question that we've heard through all of the town hall meetings, via email, and from the website feedback forms is what is going to happen to my certification? You guys have probably answered this 1,000 times yourselves. What can you tell members about how certifications will be handled if the organizations combine?
And I'll jump in on this one first. With regard to certifications, nobody is going to lose their certification. Right now, if the organizations would combine, whoever has a certification, whatever program it is, that would remain. They would continue to have that certification. And then moving forward, this is where we would have member groups and SMEs involved if the organizations combined to determine if there were competing certifications. Should they remain two different certifications? Should they combine into one certification? And again, that will be determined by member groups in conjunction with some of the staff people helping to facilitate that process. Because the people in the member groups and those SMEs are the ones that really know what's needed in the industry, and they'll have a chance to put their fingerprints on that.
And I agree fully with Bill. I would just add one other thing. If somebody has a real concern and an interest in the program of what it would look like, the certification program, what it would look like in the future, we are going to be putting together member groups, as Bill said, or committees, ad hoc committees to look at all of these. Raise your hand and volunteer. It's a great opportunity to have your voice heard and to contribute back to the organization and to the industry. So we want our members to be involved in this process, but raising your hand and volunteering is a great way to do that.
Right. Yeah. One thing I'd like to add on that, um, whether the organizations stay apart or combined, they're still member organizations. These aren't staff organizations, they're member organizations. So you as members out there, you are the ones who are going to determine what the DNA of the organization is and how it moves forward. So as Bob said, get involved, put your hand up.
I'm sure another question that you guys get a lot is why now? Because certainly the history of these organizations, I know a lot of members are probably wondering why is 2020 the right time to do this? How do you guys respond to that?
Yeah, I'll take that one also. With regard to why is 2020, I think I think Bob and myself, both as leaders of the organization, we've always been proactive people, and now you have an opportunity where you have two healthy organizations financially and in terms of the programs they have. Uh, why not now? Uh, in my approach to life, and I think Bob's the same from what I've seen of him from the outside, um, you have to be proactive. We're competing in a global economy now, so it's not just a local economy. And taking the opportunity now to combine two healthy organizations gives us more relevance in the global sphere. It also gives us a bigger voice, with policy in Washington, D.C. That's something that SSPC doesn't do in terms of lobbying or advocating. So the combined voice really helps our organization and the total organization as a whole. And again, I think what we see both domestically and internationally is some of these other organizations, standards organizations out there, moving into the space of industrial coatings and cathodic protection. And, I think it's time for us to combine and get a bigger voice out there.
And Bill's right on. The other thing I would add is, and he mentioned about both being strong. I think that's one of the beauties of what is being brought forward is you've got two strong and equal organizations, but different organizations. So our strengths are different. One of the things we looked at was what would happen if you brought these two organizations together? Where is there overlap? Where would there be holes in the organization? Where are there opportunities for synergy? And where there are things that potentially would conflict. And as McKinley advisors, again, I'll go back to them because we are using their knowledge. One of the things they said was it is rare that you see an opportunity where two strong groups serving the same industry do things in such a way that you are complementary to each other, not necessarily in conflict with each other. So where SSPC has strengths, and where NACE has strengths, they're in different places. And our weaknesses, where we each have weaknesses, and let's be honest, all organizations, all people have weaknesses. The strength of the other organization complements that. And so today we sit in a place where we have leaders who are open more than ever to collaboration. And I think that's one of the big changes as well. We've become a society that has recognized to be successful, you have to collaborate. So we're open more to collaboration. You got two organizations that mesh well together. And then I think we also recognize the reality that not only are we in a global economy and now have to compete globally for business or for opportunities, we have members in particular who are extremely busy. Their time is under great demand. And the days where you could have people easily volunteer have become less and less. And so it doesn't make any sense at all that we would duplicate effort and waste our members' time. And so I think that reality of how busy everybody's become comes into play as well. So you've got multiple things all happening at the same time that really make 2020 the ideal time to be having this discussion.
So, what are each of your goals for a combined organization? What would you personally want to see come out of this? Bob, we'll start with you.
So I think a couple things for me. One is that we truly do find the best of both organizations and keep it. If somebody asked me, do I have a concern? I don't have many, but one is that we don't get this right in the end. So, and you could do that by becoming self-serving or trying to protect or be overly protective of territory. And that has not been the attitude at all by the leadership group that's been involved. It has been very, very open, always with the flags that we're following is take the best out of both organizations. And that's one of the things I hope we do. I hope we bring the strength of SSPC and the strength of NACE together. And honestly, one of the things we're looking at is what do other groups do? And maybe somebody else does it better than both of us. So how do we bring that into the discussion? So definitely that we're stronger as an organization. The other is that we do a better job of serving our members. Again, I think both are great at this, but I also recognize that neither organization is doing it perfectly well. So if we can do a better job of offering programs, services, for our members, providing better networking opportunities, bringing the entire industry together in one place where you can truly build the relationships to advance your career, advance your company's business and activities. So I think that is the second thing, is that there's great member benefit. I also think it creates, and I'm going to be a little, I don't know, self-serving is probably not the right word, but self-interest in the sense that I think there's a huge opportunity for our staff in all of this. Very talented staffs on both sides, but as organizations become larger, it creates opportunities for them. And we always have to be aware of that because we do, I think between the two organizations, we employ well over 200 people and their careers and their livelihood are important to us as well. So one of the things I really am optimistic about is our staff will have a much improved opportunity.
And I think Bob summed it up well with a lot of things that I feel also, but there's a couple other things that I'd like to add. I mean, what I would like to see at the end of the day is after a period of time, our members said that was the right decision to combine both organizations. And for me, it's all about the members, and we are service organizations. So if a year from now, 2 years from now, we were seen as an organization that had the best member service and best um, intentions of of the members in mind, that to me would be success. The other thing for me in terms of measuring success would be, are we recognized in the industry as a one-stop shop knowledge base for both the industry and the members at large? And if we're able to do that, I think it would be successful. And as Bob mentioned, I think one of the big things is in being successful, it's having successful people. The people are what make the organization and the membership successful. So being able to provide those opportunities for our staff and everything, I think is a great thing for both them and for our members and the industry.
What have the two of you learned about your counterpart and also about each other's organizations during this process? Bill, we can start with you.
Sure, I think that's a great question too. Thank you for that, Ben. What have I learned? I've learned that there isn't as much overlap between both of our organizations as I originally thought there was. I've learned that the talent level on both organizations is at a high level. We're competitive organizations. I think everybody has a sense of pride in what they do. I like a lot of the things that NACE does, and as Bob mentioned earlier, when I look at NACE, I've learned that a lot of their strengths are areas where we can see improvement at SSPC, and I think vice versa. And I think when you take the best of both organizations and put them together, again, it's all in how it's organized and how it's managed. But if we could point everybody in the right direction and take the best of both worlds, it'll be, like I call it, a mega or super organization. And both organizations do a great job in the industry, different parts of the industry, I'd say. And I think that's the other thing that is attractive to me, and one of the things I found out with a lot of NACE's members being asset owners and facility owners, and ours being contractors, it gives a great opportunity to pair those two groups up to do more business, to network a little more, and to understand each other's needs.
Bill, I would add one other thing too, and it was one of my concerns going in, and that is how well would our people be able to work together? And that's both members and staff, right? So two different organizations, two different ways of approaching uh, their activities, two different cultures, two different parts of the country. Um, Leaders are different, et cetera. And so one of the concerns you have when you come into this, how will the two organizations mesh? And are we really that different? And I can go all the way back to that first meeting we had in Pittsburgh where we brought our senior staffs together to sort of chalk out what this could look like. And it was amazing. I know they all, probably both sides. I can speak for the NACE side, but I would assume it was the same on SSPC. There was a lot of concern and probably some trepidation about going into that meeting. But within almost minutes, you started to see the collaboration grow. You started to see them work well together. The traditional, what do they call it? Form, storm, norm, perform. My fear was the storm part was going to be lengthy, and it was minuscule. We saw the same thing when we brought the member leaders together to start working. The facilitator had to do very, very little work. In fact, originally we didn't even have a facilitator, but very, very little work to get the groups to work well together. That surprised me. There's been enough competition, to be blunt, between us over the years. There's been enough history that it could have created walls or barriers that we would have had to work hard to tear down. But time and time again, we see that fall away, whether it was, Heather and Greg working together on the membership model as we've brought other people involved, or the staff I mean, the member committees that we've started to bring together where they've started to work, people are really working cooperatively with each other. And I have to admit, that was a real concern. So it's cool to see that I don't think we're as different as people want us to think we are. I will add one other too, and that is I think the relationship between Bill and I and the trust that's been built. Early on, we made an agreement that we were going to be honest with each other. We were going to be open. If something was said or done that you disagreed with or had a problem, raise your hand and let's talk about it and let's work through it. And particularly early on, there were some things that uh, let's just call it some growing pains that we had to work through. But I think our ability to communicate and be open and look for solutions has really come through. And I think that's a real tribute to Bill and his character and how we approached the whole activity.
Based on that, what are some of the strengths that could be improved and weaknesses that could be limited by the combination?
I'm willing to jump in on that one. I'll start. I think one of the challenges that NACE struggles with is our bureaucracy. You talked about what's different. What did we learn? One of the things I think we learned and really value from the SSPC side, they're more nimble, they're more efficient and effective. They have a lot less weight of the organization hanging over them, and that's I think not surprising, just because of the nature of their organization. But how do we capture that and bring it in so that we can be quick to market, we can make decisions quickly, launch new products, programs, and services, make decisions, respond to industry needs when they're out there. Technology is changing so fast. Frankly, the economy is changing fast. I'm sure the COVID-19 is not the last crisis we're going to face. And how does the new organization respond to that and be able to be quick? So I think for us, one of the things we're learning a lot about is how to be a nimble, quick organization. The other thing that for us is really being able to serve the contractors market. So we have products for the contractors, but we're not as good as we could be at serving that market. And so SSBC brings a great relationship with that market, a great understanding with those people, those folks, and another place where we'll be better because of this relationship.
Yes, and I think from the SSPC side, I mean, there's a few things that, again, getting to know NACE a little better that I see that could really benefit us. One in particular is their international aspect and how widespread they are internationally. Roughly 45% of their membership is international. That's an area we've been trying to penetrate a little more. And I think that's a real area when you combine organizations that we could help each other out because anytime you're doing anything internationally, it's a challenge with the different cultures, the different mentalities, the different uh, demographics you have to deal with. So I think that's an area where combining will help both organizations. But NACE has done a much better job over the years of that. The other area where I see a potential benefit is in online education and distance learning. I think NACE has done a very good job with that. Um, I've looked at some of their programs online. I think they're very well done, very professional. That's an area we've been making some progress in, but I think we could accelerate that progress as a combined organization. And I'd say the third area I alluded to a little earlier was just the relationship NACE has with owners and how many owners they have involved in their organization. That's another area where, as I mentioned, I think combining their relationship with facility and asset owners to ours with contractors will benefit the industry as a whole, where everybody will learn from each other, maybe a little more, be a little more intimate, and also provide opportunities for business for both the contractors and some of the suppliers in the industry.
Looking back at this process, tell us a little bit about the people that have been involved in these discussions and what has impressed you the most about them. Bob, we can start with you.
So the people that are involved are NACE and SSPC member leaders. And when we say member leaders, it's not just board members. Clearly, there are board members involved, but there's other. We purposely chose people from across the organization. So the Kevin Garrity, the chair of the NACE Institute, is involved. We have past presidents involved. We have instructors involved. We went out. We have international members involved. We went out and we looked to make sure that we had the cross representation of the organization involved in the decision making. So, one of the things that I found about the group of member leaders as they were digging in was their willingness to really be open and honest in their assessment. So, you just heard Bill and I give an assessment of both organizations' weaknesses or our own weaknesses. That's hard to do. It's easy to be prideful and to not approach this with some level of humility. And if you do that, then these walls get built and you don't get to an agreement. But if you're really willing to say and be honest and say, how does this organization perform and how does their organization perform? Where are we strong and where are we weak? And be honest about it and look for those opportunities. You get to a better answer. So as we sit in these meetings with, I don't know, 20 people, probably 8 to 10 from both sides, it was just incredible to watch the honesty and discussion. Not that there weren't disagreements or different views, but it was always focused on the issue, never on the individual. It was always done with the utmost professionalism and respect, and always done with the idea that we do things well, but that doesn't mean we can't get better and that there aren't other ways to go about it. And so, as they did that, as they designed what this future could look like, I really do think we came up with a better answer. And there's a lot of places where the answer wasn't within NACE or SSPC today. They were willing to look outside and bring that in. So that was just incredible to me. Somebody once asked in one of the town halls, and I think it was Joe Walker that answered it might have been Terry Greenfield, but they asked how the negotiations are going. And immediately they said, it hasn't been a negotiation. It's been a discussion and it's been a conversation and it's been a work group working together to resolution. But we have never had to take a vote. We've never had to what I would call seriously work through disagreement, have somebody mediating or going back and forth as you think of traditional negotiations. It's always been working together in a group. That's just blown me away. I think that's been amazing. And then the other side I already mentioned, and that is how the staffs have worked together so quickly and gelled and started looking for solutions in such a positive way.
And from my perspective, in terms of what impressed me the most, one I think was the passion of everybody involved in the process, whether it was board members, other members, staff members. Everybody dove into this, and the word I like to use is it was very selfless. No one was out with their own agenda, as Bob mentioned. No one was out for themselves. And I'll go a step further in terms of there weren't negotiations, there weren't arguments. I didn't even hear anybody raise their voice at any meeting or on any call that I was ever involved with. I mean, it was just very, very businesslike. There was a nice balance of professionalism and having fun with some things. Everybody gelled real well, got together. We had a lot personal interactions over this period, and it was just a great relationship between everybody. And I say, and Bob mentioned this too. That's not just the board members or the member groups, but the staffs also. And so it's been very pleasant. And when you get in a meeting with 20 plus people, I think everybody's heard the term herding cats. It was never herding cats. It was the meetings were very well structured, whether it was a call or in person, and we accomplished a lot. And when we were putting together agendas, we put together very aggressive agendas, and people thought, there's no way we'll get through this. But I think we finished every meeting and call on time or even before time. So I think to me, that's an indication of how smoothly everybody worked together.
Bill, I want to add one thing there because you said two words that are really important. One was passion, and the other was being selfless. how hard is that to accomplish, right? Often when people are passionate about something, they become blinded to um, the ability to work well with others because it starts to become more of a competition or a battle. And so you're right. There was this amazing uh, chemistry that said, "Hey, I'm passionate about, and I believe in what I've done, but for the better, greater good, I'm willing to be open and, as you said, selfless, or I use the word humble, humility, in this process." And those things don't always align well in our society today.
Mhm. Well, the other part of that too, Bob, is we've talked in the past. Although you and I weren't around at the time, there was some. Let's put it on the table. There was some bad blood in history from what happened in the past,
Mhm.
and there's some of that didn't die real hard. Some of it hasn't died yet. So with that as a backdrop for some of this too, you would expect that some of that might be brought up in these meetings or discussions, but it never came to light. And I think that was one of the things that was set up from the beginning. Let's not talk about the past or review what happened in the past. Let's look to the future and what's best for everybody.
Yeah. Yeah, Bill, I think one of the most important things we did when we went into this is we established those tenets right from the beginning of how we were going to work. And
Hmm.
one of them was we aren't going to look back to the past, we're going to look to the future. And that, I believe, made a big difference. You know, it's interesting because we have been approached by some of the people who were involved in those past discussions, and they were concerned to a person when we sit and explain to them how it's being approached, the methodology that we're using, the model that we've created, the direction we're headed, how we were so thorough in our analysis, and also willing to admit we didn't have all the answers and there's some things that need to be solved later. Every one of them have come away from that conversation in support of going forward. Again, one of those things I wasn't sure what would happen because, you know, as you said, the history wasn't good at the attempts of this before, and so people left with a bad taste in their mouth. But when they saw how this group was approaching it, they were willing to let go of some of that um, past history and focus on the future. So we've had a couple of those conversations, and they've all gone well.
So, we've touched on the committees and the leadership teams of both organizations working together, but what about the rest of the staff in both organizations? How are they handling the uncertainty that is generated by these discussions?
I could start with that one. I think, as with any human being or person, when you go through a situation like this, there is some trepidation and anxiety as a staff member. Um, the questions come to mind. Will I have a job? Will I have the same benefits? Will I have the same pay? What's going to happen to me? Um, when I was in corporate life, we used to call it the WIFM, what's in it for me, right? So it's been a challenge at times to convince people that the intent of this whole potential combination is not to get rid of people, it's to keep people and to use them in potentially different ways to 1 and 1 plus 3 and expand what we're trying to do in the industry. So, again, it's difficult anytime you go through a situation like this or a downsizing to convince people that you're safe and nothing's going to happen. Having said all that, I think our staff has been approaching it very positively. They look forward to potential opportunities, as we alluded to earlier. Within a big organization, you potentially have more opportunities to move and to take on new opportunities to learn and to contribute. So I think that's all been positive. I think everybody, to be honest with you, everybody wants to just come to some uh, decision point and find out what direction it's going to go in. So once I think that happens, the anxiety level might subside a little bit. But overall, it's been positive. I think Bob and myself have tried to keep our staffs up to speed on what's going on, blow by blow, give them all the details. I know both organizations have been very transparent with all the information, both internally with our staffs and externally with the members. So there's no hidden agendas here. There's nothing behind the scenes that's going on. And everything we know and everything I know, pass that on to my staff.
Yeah, exactly. And we've done the same thing. I think the other thing that the staff counts on is, or depends on, is our past history, right? So at NACE, staff has always been considered important, at least for the last 10 or 15 years, probably a lot longer than that. I've only been here 10 years. But staff has always been considered important by our members, as well as the leadership, the staff leadership. And we have shown through other struggles and downturns. Unfortunately, the COVID-19 isn't the first crisis that NACE has had to face in the last 3 years. Everything from oil prices crashing in 2015 to Hurricane Harvey. Uh, I think I believe, and I can't speak for them, but I can sort of repeat what I'm hearing, is there's a trust that has been built over time. And so, yes, there's concern, and that's great. I mean, that's okay. I have concerns, and that's fair and legitimate. But there's also a trust that the organization will do the right thing throughout. And I think, as Bill mentioned, we have been transparent. We've shared everything that we know. I also think that our staff are extremely intelligent people. They're aware of what's going on, and they see the opportunity in bringing it together. And so they're counting on the opportunities. I Right now, I think if I took this vote within the NACE staff, this thing would pass with very, very high level. We don't have a say; it's a member vote. But I have the sense that our staffs are very positive on it. They see the opportunity, and use that to help manage any concerns that they may have.
Yeah, the other thing, and I'm sure Bob has done the same thing within our organization, I've told all of our staff, you're the experts in the industry, so
Mhm.
be confident in your abilities. The organization, needs those abilities and talents. Uh, for me personally, I came from outside of the industry, so the success of SSPC has been the people we have in the organization, not me. I'm not an industry lifelong industry person. So those same people that have made us successful so far, if the organizations combine, they'll be the same people that make a new organization successful and lead it to the next level. And I've had the opportunity to interact with a lot of people from the NACE side. Again, very talented people, and so everybody who is on either the NACE staff or the SSPC staff, they should be confident in what they do and their abilities. And those are things we're going to need as we move forward, even more so because it's not going to be an easy hoe putting these two organizations together, and we're going to need all hands on deck and everybody committed to make it work.
One of you touched on COVID-19 earlier. I know it's early, but certainly there's a lot of members in both organizations, I would assume, that are concerned about the economic fallout of the pandemic. Certainly, that's not something that any of us were anticipating when this combination was first proposed a couple of years ago. What does this current crisis mean, if anything, in terms of the viability of the deal? Bob, we can start with you because I know within the past month, obviously NACE has had to push back corrosion. So you've been on the front lines of trying to get a hold on what's going on. Update what this means, if anything, for the NACE SSPC combination.
Thanks, Ben. Yeah, interesting. Probably one of the most challenging decisions I had to lead through in my career in association management was making that decision to cancel our annual conference or postpone our annual conference. At that point in the Houston area where our conference was going to be hosted, we had not even had a case of the COVID-19 when we called the board meeting to have this discussion. Between the actual scheduling of the board meeting and the board meeting itself, we had our first couple breakouts. It was pretty early in all of this for the US, and it could have gone a lot of different directions. And to the credit, again, to I think staff and member leaders, it was a very thoughtful process to get to that decision. I give that background because I think when you start talking about how crises, whether it's COVID-19 or frankly, right now, what I'm calling the hidden crisis, the oil prices being at $20 a barrel, which in the long term may have greater impact on us than even COVID-19. When you face crises, there's a couple things that come into play. One is, do you have the resources, and in this case, financial resources, to make it through. The second is, do you have great decision making and leadership to make good decisions through the process? And that's not just at the top. That's not just the board or the CEO. That's throughout the organizations. Do you have people at each level? Because in crisis management, all the decisions can't be made at the top. They're going to be dispersed throughout. And so, do you have people who are well trained, well qualified to know what they're doing? Then the other is on the recovery side, it's going to be painful. And so, by bringing our two organizations together, I think that helps. So merging the organization ends up with, I think, an increased talent pool, both of members and staff. Obviously, bringing the resources together, the resources are better applied if we were already merged, it could be better applied during the crisis. But coming out the other side, and we get the bringing of the two organizations together, we will be stronger because we can put those resources and combine their effort and have a lot less waste. I think one of the things that sometimes gets lost is how much opportunity is lost because we aren't working together today. And whether it's in a crisis or normal operation, those opportunities are lost. But I was listening to a podcast of a leader who was talking about when you come into crisis, there's all this crisis management stuff you have to do, but keep your eye open for the opportunities, and there will be large opportunities that come out of this. If we're spending all of our time trying to build duplicative programs or position NACE versus SSPC, et cetera, we're not able to capitalize on those opportunities that are there today or will be in the future as we come out. So I think what you're going to find is coming out of COVID-19, and this isn't just a not-for-profit or association management. I think you're going to see a lot more of companies coming together because they'll find that it is better to be working together. And it just seems to me that the crises are getting closer and closer together. This will not be our last crisis. And so anything we can do to be prepared and stronger because of that, we're going to be better off. And we've talked before how this merger really does make us stronger.
Yeah, I think Bob hit it well on a number of those points. And when I was in corporate life, we always said when things get back to normal, things never get back to normal. Normal is is a relative term. So whether it's this crisis with COVID or something else in the future, as Bob stated, they're going to continue to come, and that's where you need both organizations potentially combining. I think coming out of COVID, there's going to be a couple things that are going to be happening. We talked a little bit about what we call member fatigue, where NACE is using members to do things, we're using members to do things. A lot of those are the same members. Coming out of this crisis, I think a lot of our members are going to be very focused on their own businesses and have even less time to dedicate to an organization such as ours. So I think that's potentially a good thing too, that if the two organizations combine, we won't have to strain those resources or be without those resources moving forward. So again, coming out of this whole thing, I think there's always silver linings to this. We as a nation will come out of it. We as the two organizations will come out of it, either individually or as one. And I think it's an opportunity for all of us to see how we can do business in a different way. It's an opportunity for us to see that, hey, really, it is a group effort in being successful. And I think it's an opportunity to strengthen up the staffs and leadership teams of both of our organizations to be able to see how we can work together under crisis and under conditions where we're not interacting on a day-to-day, face-to-face level. So I think if we look at those in a positive light, when we do get out of this, we'll all be better for it.
I think I'm going to add a little bit too. The world's going to be different. You talked about getting back to normal, and it's going to be a new normal. And I agree with that. The normal after COVID-19 will not be the same as normal before. But one of the things that I believe is going to change dramatically is the expectation of people of how they receive services. And that's what we do, right? So distance learning, NACE, and Bill, first of all, thank you for the compliment earlier on our distance learning program, but that's something we've been investing in for years and putting a platform in place. And we were headed towards a pretty significant launch of distance learning, probably 12 to 18 months out. Had we not been doing that work, I'm not sure we could have responded the way we did to launch CIP 1 and 2 and now CP programs online. That's going to become the new expectation. I don't see that genie going back in the bottle. Our members and customers are going to expect that they won't have to travel as much. They won't have to go sit in a hotel for 5 nights to get the learning. They'll be able to get it in their living room or at their desk at the office or at the workplace, or frankly on their iPhone in their truck out in the field. So that's going to change dramatically, that expectation. I think the other thing that's going to change dramatically is how people communicate. I don't know your experience, Bill, but I will tell you at ours, there's been a resistance, I think, to using tools like Zoom and uh, Microsoft Teams and Slack or whatever technology you're using. And we've talked before about hosting committee meetings online, and the committee members are always resistant to that. They like the social interaction. They like the ability to shake hands and share a coffee, and those are valuable. Staff has been resistant. Nobody likes to turn their cameras on, or didn't. We're seeing a totally different change on how we communicate. Uh, Zoom has become an incredibly valuable tool, as have the others. People are turning their cameras on. You know what? We had last Friday we had a happy hour with NACE staff with I don't know how many people on, all with their cameras, all with their favorite adult beverage, sitting in their living rooms or dens or wherever they're at, and having a conversation and interacting and getting a tremendous amount of that benefit that you get when you're physically together. So as this communication technology has improved, and now people have been forced to use it, I don't think they're going to go backwards. Why would I want to get on an airplane and travel halfway around the country when I can get 95, maybe even more of the same experience, the same uh, communication, the same value by doing it from my living room? So I do think you're going to see a change that sticks of how people expect to work, live, and play in the future.
You guys have both touched on it a bit already, but what are the advantages to members of becoming a combined organization compared to each organization continuing separately? And are there any disadvantages of the organizations combining?
I'll take the first stab at this. I think
Oh, I thought you were going to take the advantages and leave me with the disadvantage.
we could do that if you'd like. I'll try to hit both, and then I'll give you a shot at it. In terms of advantages, I think there's a number that stand out quite obviously. One is one membership. We have people that are members of both NACE and SSPC. If the organizations would combine, you have one membership. Eventually, at some point, you'd probably have one conference. We both have conferences set up for a number of years out right now, but at some point, you'd have uh, one conference. You'd have one program, or let's say a couple different programs that we're competing against each other, I think, for different parts of the industry, whether it's inspector programs or um, craft worker programs. I think you'd have one source of knowledge, right? And an opportunity to do, as I like to say, one stop shopping with one big organization that can cover from the alpha to the omega or the whole value chain of the industry. So I think those are a lot of different opportunities for members potentially. And again, as I mentioned earlier, and Bob's alluded to before, getting facility owners and contractors together. And let's face it, in this industry, everybody's there to do business, right? So doing business is a big part of what everybody joins organizations for to network, gain information, and all those things. And it's a great opportunity to increase the ability to do business amongst people. Some of the disadvantages, in terms of disadvantages, there's a potential. Does the organization get too big and too bureaucratic? As Bob alluded to, I think that's not their intent. That's certainly not our intent. But again, you have to be careful about moving in a direction where you become more bureaucratic than you were before. So I think that's a potential disadvantage. Um, I don't know. I don't see a lot of disadvantages. I've gone through that in my mind, and I think that's what makes this thing, for me personally, so easy to see as something that is kind of obvious. But I'll turn it over to Bob now, and I will leave him with all the disadvantages, I guess.
Well, you nailed, I think, a majority of the advantages, and there are many more. It's interesting. I keep hearing people come up with their own. One of the things I think uh, that I am finding is our membership is not monolithic. We serve a very diverse membership, and because of that, the advantages are very different, right? So the advantages of bringing together to a CEO of a company or a owner of a small business is very different than the advantage that it brings to the uh, applicator, the craft worker in the field. It's very different to the scientist and the engineer. The thing that I find interesting is I've talked to people, they all are finding advantages in it. They're different advantages, and you could probably do a whole hour podcast listing all of those advantages. But the thing I would encourage people to do is to look at this and really think about what are their advantages? What do they gain out of it? Or what do they want to gain out of it? And get that communicated and then back to get involved and volunteer and make sure that advantages come to fruit for you. On the disadvantages side, I don't know if it's a disadvantage, but it's a reality. There is going to be a tremendous amount of work in the short term that will need to be done to bring the two organizations together. We're targeting to move as quickly as we can, just like we move these. I think we moved these discussions to get to this point along quickly. We're targeting to have things up and going by January 1st next year, so in 6 months. In that 6 month period, there will need to be a tremendous focus on bringing the organizations together. And that potentially takes away from other things we were doing independently. But I would consider it an investment and not a cost. By making that investment now, we're going to be much better positioned for the future.
Yeah, one thing I will bring up too, and I don't know if it's considered a disadvantage, but a caution for the new organization, should the two organizations combine, would be complacency. And that's something that wouldn't be unique to the new organization, but you see it a lot in the business world, is a new organization becoming complacent now because they feel that they're a big organization and can do as they want. So for any organization, I think you have to avoid becoming complacent. You have to make change in advance of the change coming itself. And especially with how dynamic the world is today, just can't sit there and wait for things to happen and come to you. You have to try to anticipate and be out in front of that stuff. And I think both NACE and SSPC have been pretty good at seeing those things. And I think the organization, if it would combine, would have to be more diligent, even more than before, and try to look for those things.
If you were talking to a member that was convinced to vote no, even after the reasons that I know you guys have been laying out for a number of weeks and months, what would you say to them? Bill, we can start with you.
I would say I respectfully disagree with your vote, but I respect your opinion also. I mean, at the end of the day, you're not going to convince everybody that this is the right thing to do. Let's be honest with it. Everybody has a reason, whether it's from a legacy perspective, what they see. Some people still feel that their voice wouldn't be heard. Some people, in my opinion, are just resistant to change, and that's one of the things that I've tried to convey to people. You can't be resistant to change just because change itself. If you don't change, you die. That's my opinion. If you don't change, you're never going to be sustainable. So at some point you have to change. I realize that's difficult for some people, more difficult than others, but I do respect that. And I think that's what makes our country great. And what we have is that we have different opinions on things and we could agree to disagree. At the end of the day, everybody has to make their own decision and vote with their heart and what they feel. But again, I'd just say I think there's a better opportunity with the two organizations together, and you should really consider that.
Ben, I'll add a little bit to that too, and I do agree with Bill. I'll agree to disagree on the topic, and still respect each other. And I think that's key uh, when this is done. And the leader said there was no way we were going to go forward with this without the voice of the member being involved, and therefore we are bringing it to the membership for a vote. Uh, and that decision was made early on because the truth is, the way some of the things are written, there was even the potential we could have just done it with a board vote at both organizations. But it was clear from the beginning that we have to have the voice of the members involved, all the members, and therefore bring it to a vote. In the end, a decision is going to be made. I would say to that person to make sure that if the decision is positive and we agree to merge the organizations, that that person is willing to move beyond where they were at and get behind and support the new organization and continue to participate and continue to provide leadership and serve on committees, and to grow in that. And frankly, I say the same thing to myself. If for some reason it doesn't happen, it's not approved by the membership. First of all, I think both organizations will be much better off because of this process. I think we would see much more cooperation and collaboration. But we have to accept that that was the position of the members and continue to lead the organization and do the things to make um, to be successful in the industry. So what I really would want to be careful is for either whether you're supportive of it or you're not supportive of it, when the decision is made, that you get behind that decision and you rally behind the organization to make it successful.
So, you both mentioned earlier how both organizations have longtime members who recall previous attempts to combine the organizations, and they haven't been shy about sharing their sometimes negative opinions about this attempt. People are very passionate about their loyalties and often very blunt in their comments. What is different now compared to back then? And what do you say to people who continue to harbor these negative feelings to convince them to give this process a chance? Bob, we'll start with you.
I think it's what I just said. I think that I would challenge them to look for the good. There's good in it for everybody, and you might have to look for it. Even if you are hard set against it, there's got to be something in there that you can get your hands behind. I think the other thing I would say to them is you got to recognize that this did go to a vote of the members, and the majority of the members were supportive of it and wanted it to go forward. Both boards voted unanimously in support of this. And I know the NACE board pretty well. It is not a board that just passes things easily and freely. They look at things deeply and they have a lot of discussion and they make sure they understand what's happening. And I believe that's the case about SSPC. And for the both boards to have unanimously passed this, nobody abstained, nobody voted no, means it must have been pretty well thought out and it must be a pretty good plan. If the membership looks at it and says the same thing in a majority, supportive, I would encourage somebody who's really hard set against it to just say, take a step back, take a look at what is happening and find the good in it and get involved to participate to continue to make it better.
Yeah, and I guess how I would address that, I would ask the person based on what happened before and based on what is happening now. Is it the same? Do you see it as the same in terms of the approach and the concerns? And I think there were different concerns back then as there are now. And so I think that's one part that people have to take into consideration. The other thing that I'd ask that person to do is to put some trust in their board members. As Bob said earlier, a lot of the board members and members involved in this process are also members. They're the constituents. They have the same concerns, and they'd be doing themselves a disservice if they were pushing something that wasn't in the best interest of the industry and them themselves. So these are people that were put into positions on the board in both organizations by the membership. So have some trust in your leadership and your membership. Again, those people will continue for a period of time on the boards of the new organization. And again, is if you're concerned with something that might not go your way or something that you feel is going to be bad, get involved in the organization, be an active participant. And I talked a little bit about complacency. By having different opinions in that, that's how you avoid complacency. As much as times where we like people to have our own opinions and advocate for what we're advocating for. That's not a healthy situation either. I mean, when you get groupthink, again, you become complacent and you're not going to be sustainable. So I think good, healthy dialogue is good. Keep it professional and keep it positive and do what's in the best interest of the organization and the industry. And I think if you keep what's in the best interest of the industry as your main focus, and not make it a parochial thing, it'll work out.
Yeah, Bill, you said something really important, and that is that they communicate their concerns. One thing that the leaders of this have not been shy about is being out there and talking to people and wanting to hear the pros and the concerns. We did the town halls at your conference. We've done our virtual town halls since our conference has been postponed. The member leaders and the staff leaders, for that matter, have made themselves very, very available to hear what people are thinking, to hear their concerns, to hear what they like, and they've adjusted to address those concerns. So if somebody's got a real concern, I highly encourage them to get in touch with one of the committee leaders that have been involved in this, or call Terry Greenfield on our side, or Joe Walker on your side, Sam or Tim. But reach out to the leaders and express your concerns, and let us have an opportunity to address them. But also, we want to engage in that and understand it so that as we go forward, we can not just address the concerns to you verbally, but make the impact to the future plan that concern doesn't come to fruition.
You've both spoken about trying to reassure members who may have some questions about this combination. In your opinion, what's the most misunderstood, excuse me, what's the most misunderstood thing about these discussions and the potential combination? Bob, we can start with you.
Yeah, I'm going to take it all the way back to one of the very first questions that was asked. And I think you said it's the most asked question. And that's what's going to happen to my certification. I will argue that is one of the most important things that both organizations offers and is meaningful to our individual members. It is, for many, it is core and key to their livelihood, their careers, their businesses, and getting that right. And unfortunately, I've heard different things being said, rumors out there. You know how it goes. Something gets said and then it gets repeated, and at each repetition, it changes. The old telephone game when we were kids. It There's a lot of things being said, and I would challenge that people come back to what is actually being said by the team that's negotiating, what's being said in the town halls, what we're saying here on this podcast, because that is the one place where I have heard things propagating that maybe put spins on the reality that aren't there, aren't true. The reality is, as Bill said, your certification will be there the day after, and in the probably the short term and into the early long term, almost exactly like it is. And then member leaders, and when I say member leaders, it's not the board of directors or the executive committees of both organizations. It's going to be people who work on the certification commissions, people in our case, or whatever committee on the SSPC side. It's going to be people who carry these certifications being brought in to hear their voice as we design this. And there's I talked earlier about the importance of the tenets. One of the tenets that we're following is minimal to no negative impact to our members. If we can't do this in a way that makes our members stronger and better, then it doesn't make sense. And so there really will be a focus that whatever happens with certification, the members are going to benefit from it. So that's the area that I think I've heard the most potential for misunderstanding.
Yeah, and Ben, from our side, I think one of the big things we've heard, in addition to what Bob alluded to, was losing their voice. I think a lot of our contractors are afraid that they're going to lose their voice, going, potentially combining with an organization that's bigger than ours. But when you look at the demographics, again, we're about 45% contractor based as our membership. And I think a lot of people fail to realize that NACE does have a lot of contractors in their organization. They also have a lot of people that relate to the paint and coatings industry, right? And I think, Bob, if I'm not mistaken, you had thrown out a number of 70% plus or minus relate to some coatings application. So I think that's another thing. You asked the question earlier, what did you learn about NACE or what do we learn about SSPC? That's one of the things I think it was very interesting to me that large of a portion of the NACE membership had some type of coatings affiliation. And when you look at how we've structured the member committees that have been working on this and the board committees, we have contractors on the committee. In fact, Sam Scatero, who is heading it up from the SSPC side, he is a contractor. We have Gary Manis on that committee. He's also a contractor. So people aren't going to lose their voice. And again, if you look at the information that's been put together as to how the new organization would be board structured and supported through member groups and advisory groups, the contractors have a big voice in there, as do the owners and as do the international segments of our businesses. So there was a lot of diligence that went into thinking this out. It was a very thoughtful process. How do we ensure that everybody does have a voice in the future, that they don't lose their voice, and they will be relevant?
So, other than certifications, what have been a couple of the most frequently raised concerns brought to you by members, and what have your responses been to those concerns?
I think one of the things that has been brought up in a few of the sessions that we've been involved with has to do with chapters and sections in different parts of the world and domestically. Um, how's that going to work? What will happen? And again, that's another area where we're going to leave a lot of the design to member groups or groups that know that a little better than the board members who are involved with putting this proposal together. But I think some basic tenets that we've tried to get out there, that if there are two groups within close proximity to each other, we'd like to probably see them combined to form one group to represent the new organization. If groups were independent and one was in a geographic area and another one wasn't close by, that particular group would represent the new organization, both the NACE and SSPC initiatives. So I think, again, that's another one, in terms of chapters and sections that we've heard pretty frequently.
Oh, the question I probably hear most on my side is why why is this a merger of equals? NACE has many more members, our revenues are greater. Why is this a merger of equals? And the answer we give is there are multiple ways to measure the strength of an organization, and the number of members is clearly one. The amount of revenue is clearly another. There are some others, and a number of certifications that are offered. That's another. But there's also other things, such as access to markets, or actually interesting on a financial perspective, if you look at our balance sheets, which is the right way to assess the value of an organization, we're almost equal in on the balance sheet. So when you start really looking at all the various elements of the way to measure the strength of an organization, it became really clear that we are equal. There's some places where SSPC is much stronger than NACE, and there's some places where NACE is stronger than SSPC. And there are truly other places where we're equal. And so by establishing, again, one of those tenets from the beginning, this is the bringing together of two equal organizations. Um, First of all, I think it's helped facilitate a lot of the conversation and allowed us to work to better solutions. But it recognizes the truth. These are equally strong organizations, different, but equally strong.
After the vote concludes, and that's April 17th, how soon will members hear about the results and how will that be distributed?
The hope is that that would be April 18th,
Yes.
and we would get that out on our websites, social media, and whatever avenues we can. Maybe we even do another podcast.
A podcast. I expect there will be an email that goes out to everybody, just like we've been doing the regular Friday emails. I just hope we don't have any technical difficulties like hanging chads. I think we've put a good system in place, an excellent system. The platform that we're using is a third party company that does a couple things for us. One is their technology is used in many, 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 many of these kinds of votes and elections. But also, it brings that independence. We don't. There's no way for us to manipulate the vote or play games. It is what it is. We don't know who votes. We don't know what people's votes are. We just have overall totals to know how many people voted and what the results are. So that independent platform and why we're doing it electronically like we are is to really give it that um, integrity that you want in a vote. So I think that will go quickly, and we should have the results very, very soon. And the communications team is probably already thinking about how we will get it out. But I can imagine email, social media. I'm sure there will be member leaders and staff screaming from the balconies that it's been successful.
The other point too, just to build on that, is both organizations are using the same third-party voting organization.
We've worked very hard to keep the experience of the vote, the process, exactly the same for both NACE and SSPC members. I will take this opportunity to put out I don't know if it's a warning, a caution, or whatever. If you are a member of both organizations, you will get two opportunities to vote, one from NACE, one from SSPC. They're going to look very similar, but it is two separate votes, and you should vote in both of those.
So, if the members vote yes on the proposed combined organization, how will both organizations move forward?
Well, I think both organizations, we've already had some preliminary discussions. We would probably use another third-party organization, namely McKinley Advisors or somebody else, to help us through that process. Once the decision is made, if it is made to combine, that's when really the heavy lifting starts. And when you go through a process like this, it isn't like you can bring in different teams of people to help you with this. A lot of the work has to be done by the staffs of both organizations who are intimate with a lot of the details. So it will be heavy lifting, and it will be a process that will take a period of time. And as Bob alluded to, the intent is to try to have the new organization, if the vote goes in favor of it, to be up and running by January 1st of next year. So that doesn't leave a lot of time. There's a lot of work to do, and everybody will have to, like I said before, have all hands on deck.
One of the things that, as we've put thought into this, there is clearly the work that will need to be done by the members, and that will be much more visible. Committees coming together to look at certification and sections and chapters, and bringing our technical committees together to start to look at how standards are going to be developed in the future. Those are going to have a very, very heavy member engagement and involvement. But there's also a lot of things that will need to be done behind the scenes that will also have to be accomplished. There's a whole bunch of legal work that needs to be done. If you remember, we're creating a new organization, so all the legal applications and filings and working with the IRS to make sure that we maintain our not-for-profit status, and all of that will need to be done. There's going to be budgets, bringing budgets together and bringing finances together, and from a staff standpoint, bringing I believe we're 401k and SSPC is a 403b. We got to bring that together and payroll. So there's all these things that will need to happen behind the scenes to truly create one new organization. Some of it the members are going to be highly, highly involved in. Some of it will happen through others. But in the end, it is going to take this, I think, for a short period of time, a significant amount of effort.
What would the timeline look like in the short term? How soon would members be able to see some of these changes?
So where we've laid it out, and we honestly we didn't focus on designing the future because we wanted to stay focused on making sure we are communicating with the members and getting things right in the design. But the plan we do have is by January 1st, we will have all the legal filings and everything out of the way. I also could see that in that same period, we would identify and seat the new board. We would probably start to get that board meeting. I could see that we would start to bring together the committees to look at things like standards and sections and chapters and certification, and starting to do some of the preliminary work. There are certain things that are going to be, I don't know if the word's easy, but much easier to bring together. For example, we have a very robust uh, government relations activity, and that's not an area SSPC's put a lot of effort in. So that can quickly get put up in place and representing both organizations. We depending what happens with COVID-19, we had a fly-in on Capitol Hill where NACE members traditionally come and spend a day talking to their congressmen and women, their representatives and their senators. I could easily see that this year that would include all of our SSPC colleagues. So there are some things that they'll start to see immediate involvement of the two. And there's other things that are going to take a lot more time. Some might take 18 months, even 2 years of working together to resolve this.
Yeah, I think one of the other things that would happen relatively quickly is we would get a name for the organization.
Yes.
New org and new org institution would not be names. So that would be a third party organization that would help us through that.
So, if the members vote yes, looking into a crystal ball, what do you think everything will look like in April 2021?
I think you'll see, as Bob alluded to, some things will be done and some things will still need to be done. When you go through a process like this, combining organizations, a couple things that are, I'd say, longer in terms of trying to get completed would be combining like IT platforms, getting all the financials on one platform, getting all the communication tools together. Combining some of the benefit packages and salary structures and things like that for the organization. So some of those will take a little longer, but I think by April of next year, potentially you'll see some of the things that Bob alluded to and a few more. And I think the organization will be on its way to becoming, one entity.
Yeah, I agree. I think you're going to see the new organization by then. If I look into the crystal ball, that will be that's who we'll all be involved with is the new organization. There'll still be things that have to be done, but you will see that new organization up and working. Hopefully, you'll see the branding, the communication, how we function and work will start to look very much like the new organization.
Yeah, I think that's a big part too, is, talking about the staffs. I think at that time, for sure, people will know what position they have and what jobs they're going to be doing because you have to have all that in
Yes.
place for the organization to function well.
Will things continue as they have if the vote is no? And what I mean by that is anything going to come out of these year plus long conversations if the membership was to vote no?
I think there could be potential things that still come out of this in terms of maybe looking at combining certain parts of the organization, not combining them, but working together more closely on some of the things. I think if anything that comes out of it, probably from both perspectives, is a newfound respect for each other in terms of how people are doing business and working together. And again, we both alluded to it in earlier conversations. Both organizations are very competitive with each other. I think that's for just the nature of the beast, and there's a certain pride associated with both organizations. So I think it'll be business as usual on a lot of things, but I think there'll be opportunities to maybe collaborate a little more so than we've done in the past.
Yeah, I think that's one of the differences this time. So when this was attempted in the past, they'd always seem to end with, frankly, animosity and negativity. This time, if the membership chooses to not go forward, which they have the option to do, I think it ends with, as Bill said, a very healthy respect for each organization. And I think it creates a platform for collaboration and working together in the future. We know each other better. We know each other's strengths and weaknesses. I think personal relationships have been built that are very strong, a healthy respect. And so I do think that it will be a different environment should it not pass. Of course, we know it's going to. So hopefully, we're not talking about this in the future.
So, as Bob mentioned just a minute ago, this is going to be a completely new organization. Some members who are in favor of this combination have gone as far as suggesting a name for the new association. Now, we know it won't be New Org, but what are some of your favorite suggestions? Bob, we'll start with you.
I don't have one. I honestly, I've stayed away from that. My marketing team will tell you I'm a lousy branding person. Although I do have to take some credit for the NACE's brand that's starting to come. Life hands us lemons, we make lemonade. Not the artistic piece, but some of the language. Short of that, my branding skills are very weak, so I haven't even thought about what it would look like.
Yeah, I'm the same. I guess my favorite would be space because it's the final frontier for us.
Yeah, oh, that's true. That's SP and AC. Yeah,
Right.
that one. That was out there. Although I think that one might be claimed somewhere. So, that's one of the challenges with branding. It's not just about the creativity of coming up with a new logo and, word structure or whatever. It's really, number one, understanding what promise you're making. What's that communication? And both organizations have a strong brand. And so we got to make sure we're embracing that in the new organization. But it's also that you're not competing with somebody else who's already out there. There's a whole legal side of establishing a brand
Right.
that has to go through, and that's why you have to turn it over to the experts. It's not just a creative process. There's a lot more to it, and that's why we bring in a third party.
Right. A lot of that space is taken already, so I
Yeah.
don't think you can agree on one name to start with. You'll probably have a half a dozen names and have to find out which names are taken or what's still available out there.
The last question that I think we have now, we do have a few questions coming up that we've solicited from social media, but what's the best way that members can learn more about all of these discussions and what's happening between SSPC and NACE? I'm guessing websites and social media, but what's the best way for a member that's curious and wants to learn more to get more information?
Both of our organizations have set up on our websites specific pages, landing pages that have all the information, all the past messaging. They have the video, town hall videos, podcasts. Any information that's required is on the site. And if people require further information, they can email anybody at SSPC or NACE. We have an email address set up for questions to come in that's on that site also. And as you mentioned, social media, there's a lot of stuff that we're putting out on social media. We've been sending out messaging every week. And but the best source, in my opinion, is the website.
I have nothing more to add. It's exactly the same for the NACE side. You can use social media to ask your questions. We're monitoring that, and we'll respond or get you an answer.
As Ben mentioned, we asked on both SSPC and NACE's social media accounts for members to submit any questions they may have about the proposed combined organization. So the next few questions will be coming directly from our members. And first off, an SSPC member wants to know if they are going to lose participation as individual members with the organization, and if, with the new org, will communication still remain open with members, and will they still be able to contribute new ideas to the organization? Bill, we'll start with you.
Absolutely. If you're a member of NACE or a member of SSPC, that membership will carry over. Also, with that membership carrying over will be your tenure. So if you were with SSPC for 10 years and NACE 15 years, you would be tenured for 15 years. And then when the new organization would combine, if it was voted on, you would enroll with the new organization as a new member at that time.
Yeah, and as far as their voice goes or their ability to participate, I don't. That's not going to change for either organization. I probably should have answered this back when you asked what did I learn about the other organization. One of the things I learned is that both NACE and SSPC, I think, are equally committed that these are member-led organizations, that the members' voice matters, that they're involved and engaged in the decision making. And so, for a person who has an interest of being engaged, I'll say what I said earlier. Let us know. Raise your hand. Send an email that says, "Hey, I'd like to participate in whatever area they want to participate in," and that'll be taken into consideration. If the new organization does get formed, I'm sure you'll start to see call for volunteers, just like we both do today, and they'll be able to participate. So I don't see either side changing dramatically in how members engage or their role in the organization.
We've had a few questions sent in from our international members. For example, a member from Africa wants to know if there will be more opportunities for professional development in Africa, such as more training, quarterly scheduled exams, and training centers.
I'll take that. I think there will be. Africa has been on the NACE radar screen for some time, but our challenge has been resources and people to focus on it. And as we said, bringing these two organizations together, where we're using our resources wisely and not duplicating each other's efforts, I think is going to free up our ability to do more in Africa and other parts of the world as well. So I think Africa is one of those places that you'll see increased engagement from the organization.
I would agree with that. And I'd also add, we talked about it a little earlier, as you get more distance learning opportunities, I think not just Africa, but everywhere, there'll be more opportunities to engage with the new organization via online training and education.
Bill, great point. That new world that we're going to be, I think, embracing post COVID-19. So, absolutely.
Our members in Latin America are wondering how the new org is going to handle chapters and sections, and if they're going to be able to be as involved with the new org as they are with the current organization now. So, how will local sections covering the same area operate?
Yeah, I think we touched on that a little earlier, as I mentioned that what we'd like to see if there is a section or a chapter in a given city or in close proximity, that they would combine and be one and represent the new organization. And then in areas where there is no chapter or section, new ones forming, that they would form as one entity representing the new organization. And I think within those given geographic areas or domestic areas, it's up to the NACE and SSPC members within that area to get together and decide how they want to develop their programs for that given chapter or section. And another thing, they probably won't be called chapters or sections. We want to get away from any legacy names that have connotations associated with them. So it'd probably be called something other than a section or a chapter.
Yeah, and I think one other thing I will add too is I think there's a new opportunity to, again, COVID-19 is accelerating, but probably was on the radar screen anyways. And that is to be able to to overcome geography in bringing people together. So technology now is going to allow us to connect people around the world, not just because they happen to live in a particular geographic area, but because of their professional interests. And so with that, I think it's actually going to increase the opportunity for members to become engaged and involved and to serve. They'll be able to serve at a local section level. I could see a future and a model where maybe a section isn't based on geography, but it's based on, a particular interest, and people from all over the world participate in. Well, that's still going to need volunteer leadership. So I see a lot of opportunity um, for members to be involved in serving other members.
A couple of questions that are fairly related. Will the combined organization create an industry monopoly, and will pricing on training in the new org continue to be fair to members? Bob, we can start with you.
Yeah, that's an easy one. So one of the tenets from the beginning was there would be no significant negative impact to our members, and so I don't see pricing for these things changing. As far as creating a monopoly, I don't think we have a monopoly. First of all, there are other organizations that offer this kind of certification and training, and there's more growing every day, both for profit and not for profit. So I think what it does is it protects the interest of those members and customers who've already invested in either their NACE or SSPC certification and maintaining its value. Because there are so many others that are starting and trying to start programs to mimic or copy us, but they don't have the integrity necessarily that our two programs have. So I think it's quite the opposite. And I also don't think you're going to see a significant change in the financial structure or the pricing structure of these programs, simply because there are other programs that we'll have to compete with and be there. So there's not a monopoly, and it's I think again it's in the interest of our certification holders that we're working together.
Yeah, I think the other thing built into that, again, is going back to board structure, where you're going to have a couple boards policing this too, right? And those boards are members of the industry. So I'm sure they don't want to charge themselves more than they need to charge.
There's another side of this that I think actually helps offset that. So there are costs with offering certification programs and education programs, significant costs beyond our control, like insurance and facilities and equipment and materials and printing and all of those things that we have to do. By bringing the two together, our negotiating power with the providers of those things goes up. And therefore, we can help actually drive costs down, making it more effective for us to deliver and therefore help manage any future increases.
And of course, our members want to know, how will this affect a member that has a level 1 training in both organizations? Will their certificates just be combined into one?
That's to be determined. We don't know. That again, back to leaving it to the member committee to work through that and figure it out. Initially, they'll keep both. They'll have both cards. They'll both be effective and active. And I could see it's going to take some time to really work through that. The plan would be that the member group that we bring together would look at both programs, look at what both are content of both programs, look for where there may be overlap, and look where there may be uniqueness, and make sure that is all captured, and then make decisions how we go forward. And it could end up being keeping two separate programs, frankly. I don't think that's the case, but it could be the case. Most likely it will be some point in the future an integration of the two, but that's really still to be determined.
The benefit to them is, if it is combined, they only have to have one certification. They only have to recertify one time and take all the testing and training at one point. So,
All right, well, that concludes all of our questions for today. Thank you both for taking the time to answer our questions, and we look forward to hearing the results of the member vote. If you are a member, be sure to cast your vote before April 17th. And remember, if you are a member of both SSPC and NACE, you will have the ability to vote twice. Be sure to follow SSPC and NACE on social media to stay up to date with all of the latest updates.